Today I'd like to do a talk on emotional regulation, or how to manage our emotions. So a big part of who we are is what we feel inside, what our emotions are. And often we can be quite good at masking our emotions, or we don't share how we're feeling with people all the time. But our internal world, the thoughts, the things that we say to ourselves all the time, and how we feel all the time has a massive effect on our life, on how we are experiencing our life from moment to moment. So knowing how to deal with the emotions inside, in particular emotions that we experience as difficult, like if we have a lot of anger, or if we have a lot of fear or anxiety, that we know how to manage this. Sometimes it can feel like our inner world has just completely taken over, and we can get lost in these feelings. So it's really important to know that we all have all of these feelings inside, that we all have angers and fears, that they are a natural part of who we are, that in many ways they're protective, that fear keeps us out of danger, and that anger protects us when we're afraid, that it keeps us safe. So we need these emotions to a certain point. Without fear and anger, we might be abused, or we might be killed. We might not survive very long. When we're young children, we start the process of learning how to cope with difficult emotions. And part of that learning is through our primary carer or carers. So how they react when we're feeling very scared or angry, it helps us to gauge how we should be. And if they're quite comfortable and quite okay with how we're feeling, then often we will feel more okay or more comfortable with how we're feeling as well. Overall, we need to learn how to regulate and manage our emotions and not repress them. So if we're really scared or angry about a situation and we push that down, it doesn't leave, it just stays deep inside, and it can fester. And the more that we repress and the more that we push down and pretend it's not there, the more it grows, and then it kind of seeps out in distorted ways. An example would be if I had difficulties in my home life. Let's say I lived with someone who was always getting angry with me or stressing about different things, and I wasn't saying to that person, actually, you're bothering me, this is stressing me out, can you manage that better? But if I keep taking it in and not standing up for myself, then this anger gets pushed down. And let's say I go out later and I drive my car and I start getting really angry with the traffic or angry with people on the road. But actually, I'm not really angry with the traffic or the people on the road. I'm angry with the person who I live with, who I perceive as making my life difficult. And I'm not dealing with that. I'm not telling that person that this needs to be dealt with. I'm holding it in. So we need to learn how to manage our situations in life, how to stand up for ourselves, and how to deal with the emotions that pass through us. Sometimes emotions can get very overwhelming because we find it hard to stand up for ourselves, or we find it hard to deal with difficult things. Or sometimes we take responsibility for other people's pain. So if someone else is having a hard time, we might think it's our fault. Or if someone else is upset, we might wonder what we did to cause it, or if they don't like us anymore. So we need to realize that when other people have difficulties, that unless we know we've done something specific or they've told us it's our fault, that we shouldn't jump the gun too much and assume that it's our fault unless we're really sure about that. Because I think that's a common thing that we can struggle with, that we take on too much of other people's stuff. So whatever it is that's happening in your life that is causing difficulty on the inside, emotional difficulty, there's something about being able to see what that is clearly, to identify the feelings, the scenarios, the self-talk. So identifying what you're feeling, usually it's along the lines of fear or along the lines of anger or frustration or anxiety or upset, and identifying what's triggering that, who is triggering that, or what life situation is triggering that, Or what is it that you're not doing or doing in your life that is triggering that? Because it could be something that, some habit or some pattern that you have yourself. So really getting to see what is causing the feeling so that you have a clear idea of what it is that you need to work with. Often we can avoid or pretend that something's not happening or just skirt around issues. But if you can be clear on what's happening, then that's the first step to learning how to manage it or change it. The next step is to look at your emotions that you are experiencing. So what exactly is trying to pass through you? What emotion is trying to come up and out? And if it's fear or if it's anger or anxiety or sadness, grief, pain, being able to see that and start to accept that that is there. Not trying to push it down, not trying to avoid it. Acknowledging this experience and feeling needs to come through me. Maybe because of a certain situation that is happening or has happened in the past. And this is the feeling or the residue feeling that's there. And I need it to come up and out. So accepting the emotion, allowing it to be there and trying to work through it as you process it and let it out so that you can leave it behind you. Now, if it seems that these emotions that are coming up are far too big, that you are going to be so overwhelmed that you might even disconnect from yourself a bit, then that would be an indicator that maybe this is such a big issue or a big experience that you might need more support with it. So that would be a time when you would go to a therapist or a counsellor or someone who you know who can really help you rather than just try and face this feeling on your own. For the majority of feelings, I think we can deal with them ourselves, but sometimes there have been things that have happened in life that are just far too big and that we really need holding and nurturing and support to get through them. So being clear on when it's a situation that you're okay to deal with by yourself and when it's too big or too much and you need more support. So when you decide that you're going to look at an emotion that's coming up, you might want to try and relax a little bit first. So when we get stressed and upset, what happens is we tend to go into the fight or flight experience, which is our sympathetic nervous system. We go into a bit of a state of panic, and when that happens we get a lot of adrenaline rushes through the body, and when adrenaline rushes through the body it gets our body to change a little bit. So our pupils will dilate and that allows us to take in more in our visual field, so we become more hypervigilant. We can see more that's going on around us. The blood will go to our lungs so that we can take in more oxygen, which will mix with glucose quickly in the body, which will give us energy. And our blood will go to our arms and our legs, to the muscles, to help us to run or to fight from some kind of danger or threat. So that's what happens when we have a lot of adrenaline and we go into this fight or flight state. So sometimes emotions can be the fight or flight, which could be fear or anger. Or sometimes our emotions can be grief or sadness or pain. So whichever one that's coming up, either way, there's something about learning how to relax and allow that to be there. So to do this, I often find that taking a few deep breaths really helps. So to do that, you would relax your neck and shoulders. Notice the arms and legs, the muscles in the arms and legs, and try and relax them. And when you take a deep breath, sometimes people will take quite a shallow breath, so it's not like that. So it's taking a deep breath down into the bottom of the lungs. So that breath goes deep down inside, and then you try and breathe out a little bit slower than you breathed in. So we'll do it together, okay? So the breath in would be, and the breath out is, and each time you take a breath out, you try and relax your neck and shoulders, Relax your arms and legs, relax your face muscles, and even your forehead, your eyebrows. People tend to clench them. So when we're stressed, when we're in fight or flight, the breathing is more shallow. So when you breathe a little bit deeper and slower, it's actually telling your nervous system that you're actually okay. So you're telling your nervous system it's okay to relax, to go into a parasympathetic state, to go into a more relaxed nervous system state. So when you're in a more relaxed state, you can try and slow down your body. Your breath and your thinking, your breathing and your thinking are very much connected. So the faster your mind is thinking, the more your muscles are clenching, the more your breath is shallower. So the deeper and slower you breathe, the more it allows that space for your mind to relax. And when you're relaxing your muscles as well, you're also sort of giving a signal to your mind, you don't need to think that fast. We can slow down a little bit. And you can bring in an inner observer that watches your mind, that's looking at what's going on in your thoughts and saying, hang on a second now, am I happy with what I'm thinking? Do I agree with what I'm thinking? Am I going on the train of thought that I want right now, or would I like to change that? So you use your inner observer to try and assess the situation and to try and get a little bit of clarity on it, to try and think clearer. And if you're struggling to think clearly, and if your mind just won't stop racing, then a way to try and help you to slow down and come out of that is to focus on your senses. So often people will use 3 or 5 things with each of the senses to focus on. So to start with, often people will start with their sense of sight. So looking around the room and finding 3 or 5 things to look at and really pay attention to. So for example, you might look out your window and see a tree and think about that tree and think, okay, the leaves are green, the trunk is brown. This is a tree that reminds me of a place where I shelter from the rain or the sun. So you look at the tree, that's one thing. Another thing you might look at is the wall. You might look at the wall that's beside you and think, okay, what do I think about the colour of that wall? What's the texture? It's kind of hard, maybe it's cold, maybe it's warm. So really noticing the wall. Or you could see people around you, like if you're getting into a state of panic and you're in a social situation, you could look at the people around you and think, okay, they actually don't look very stressed. They don't look very panicky. They're okay. Maybe I can be okay. Looking at the different things around you and trying to take them in. That stops you from going into your inner world where you're panicking or getting upset, and it takes you out into the world outside. You're looking at the world outside and you're coming out of yourself a little bit, out of your panic, out of your upset, out of your stress, as a way to try and become a bit more clear. So another sense that you can use is the sense of smell. So you can start to smell things around you. And I know some people don't have a good sense of smell, so you can even imagine what strawberries smell like, or what chocolate smells like, or coffee, some of the things that you like the smells of. Or if there's actually smells around you, you can notice those smells and identify them and try and find out, where did those smells come from? Then you've got the sense of sound. So you can try and really hear what sounds are around you. There might be the sounds of the traffic. There might be the sounds of birds, or of water, or of rain. There could be wind blowing through trees. So really listen to whatever sounds there are around you. There's often electric sounds, or the sounds of pipes, or buzzing or humming sounds. So notice whatever sounds there are around you. And again, that helps bring you out of the emotional overwhelm that you've been experiencing inside. It brings you out into the outer world, clears the space a little bit so that you can think a bit clearer. And then finally, another sense that you can use is the sense of touch. So you can feel your feet on the ground. Often people will use that as a kind of grounding exercise. Feel the sensations of your feet touching the ground, the weight of your feet on the ground. You can feel the sensations of muscles in your body and notice if they're clenching or if they're relaxed. You could feel your skin touching your clothes. You can feel the sensation of your skin and your clothes. You can feel you can even, if you're really struggling with it, you can touch your own hands. You can feel your own hands or your own skin as a way of bringing you back into your senses, into your feelings. So using your senses as a way of bringing you back into the present moment a bit more so that you can have a bit more clarity, you can come out of emotional overwhelm a little bit, you can be a bit clearer. So this is a time to pay a little bit of attention to the body, to notice where you're clenching muscles. You might be breathing shallow, try and breathe a bit deeper. You might be clenching muscles around your chest. You might be clenching your arms, your shoulders, your legs. So try and relax these muscles, try and rest into the body, try and sink down. Notice how heavy the body is. Sometimes really feeling how heavy the body is. The arms can be quite heavy, the legs can be quite heavy, as a way of dropping into the body, which helps us to relax, come out of the overwhelm a bit more. After you've grounded yourself a little bit and you've come a little bit out of the emotional overwhelm, you might want to take a little space. You might want to take a bit of time for yourself. You might want to switch off, sit, read, meditate, go for a little walk, do something that helps you to just get a bit more clarity, come back into yourself a little bit more. You might want to do some things that help you to process what has happened, process what you've been through, that help you to get more and more grounded and back to a healthy, balanced place inside. So if you've had a lot of adrenaline rush through your body, often it can take 10, 15, 20 minutes, even a half an hour sometimes to get that adrenaline out of your body. So doing something physical usually helps to process the adrenaline. That can be as simple as going for a walk, as doing some stretches, a little bit of yoga, a little bit of exercise. Even simple things like jumping up and down, jumping jacks, a quick run around the area that you live in. Something like that, skipping even, just to help move the adrenaline, mop up the adrenaline. And when you do some exercise, often the side effect is that you end up with more dopamine, more serotonin, which are feel-good hormones that make you feel a bit better anyway. Finding ways to self-soothe is really important as part of this process. So finding a way to be really kind to yourself, really gentle with yourself, to nurture yourself, to say nice things to yourself. It's not helpful to give out to yourself about going through a difficult emotion or having emotional overwhelm. So just finding a way to be nice, be supportive of yourself, do things that make you feel good. It could be, if you're in a cold place, making a hot water bottle, having a warm scarf. It could be making a cup of iced tea if you're in a hot place. It might be reading a book, doing some meditation, doing some breathing techniques. Anything that makes you feel like you're being gentle towards yourself, self-caring. You know, it could be having something healthy to eat. A part of this process is trying to preempt emotional overwhelm, knowing what triggers it, where it comes from, when it's more likely to happen, so that you can create a plan to help manage it, to help address it sooner, to see it before it comes and takes over, to see the emotions rising before you get into the emotional overwhelm. And usually it starts by looking at what happened retrospectively, looking back and saying, well, this is what happened, this is how I manage it. Knowing how to preempt your stress is really important, or to preempt whatever your emotions are. So take some time to sit and write down, when you get into emotional overwhelm, what are the things that trigger it, and how can you preempt them? How can you stop that before you get carried away with it? How can you manage it better? Do you need to take more breaks? Do you need to manage your environment better? Do you need to take more space where you take a deep breath and slow down? Do you need to stand up for yourself more? What is it that you need to do to manage your emotions better, that you don't get to that emotionally overwhelmed place? Many people will keep a mood journal, so they will monitor the moods that they've had during the day as a way of being able to see when they get triggered, how they get triggered, and where they can change these things. Like for some people, it's always the evening time that they're emotional, or always the morning time. So if you have a better sleep, or if you go to sleep earlier. For some people, it's around food if they haven't eaten. For some people, it's if they don't take breaks in work. So maybe starting a mood journal and trying to see where you get emotional and emotional overwhelm and how to manage it. Thank you.